everyone. I'm so glad to introduce you to Pamela Davis, my mentor and founder of Nonprofits Insurance Alliance. And it gives me great pleasure to have an interview with Pamela, and we'll be speaking with her about what NIA, Nonprofits Insurance Alliance, is seeing during the pandemic, what's going on in terms of trends, as she sees it, and the company sees it. But first, let's hear from Pamela. Just a little bit of background. What is NIA? How did you start? And then let's dive into some questions.
So how many years do you have, Mark, for this conversation? No, just teasing. Let's move on here. So Nonprofits Insurance Alliance is a group of insurance carriers for nonprofit organizations. We are cooperatives. We're owned by our members. We offer property casualty insurance, and for only 501c3 nonprofits right now, we insure about 22,000 nonprofits in about 32 states. So been around about 30 years.
So I just want to make sure folks understand, are you a broker or are you an actual insurance company? How does that look?
Thanks for that clarification. We are the insurer. We're the company that actually issues the policies, and we work through insurance brokers. So we work with a little more than 1,000 insurance brokers around the country. They bring nonprofits to us, they apply through us, and then we actually, once it's approved and they decide to purchase the coverage, then we write the policy, we handle the claims, we do all the loss control, we do a lot of education, free education. So,
and just a little bit more about NIA, why the focus on nonprofits? And I mean, it's a little bit of a plug, but like, I know that you are not just an insurance provider. So yes. One, why focus on nonprofits? And two, what else do you do?
I started this back in the late 80s when nonprofits just couldn't get insurance. It was the commercial insurance industry turned against them. And so I determined that we had to have our own insurance company where nonprofits could be in charge. And now we're a 501c3 nonprofit group. Every one of the insurers is a 501c3 nonprofit itself. We have board of directors elected by our members. So we're controlled, governed by the nonprofit sector, and we are a C3 nonprofit ourselves.
And you said 22,000 members?
That's correct. Right now, about half of them are in California because we started there earlier, 10 years earlier. And now about half of them are outside of California. But the outside of California insurer is growing faster than California, simply because, you know, there's a lot of states.
New market, yeah. And then beyond insurance, what else do you guys offer?
Right. We are very proud of our loss control and education. We also are the publisher of Blue Avocado. So some folks might know that magazine. I think you do. But we are very much into helping nonprofits in a very low cost way or free. Most of our services are free to help them with their risks so that we can pay less on claims.
Yeah. And obviously and support the nonprofits. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And you have attorneys on staff that help with some of these questions.
Yes.
And
one of the biggest services that we offer is called employment risk management services. And that's, we have actually 3 employed attorneys. They don't have to be attorneys because they're not really providing legal advice, but they're there to help our members who have employment questions. So if you have directors and officers insurance with us that covers employment practices, you just have an unlimited source of information from one of our attorneys. And they'll help you do all kinds of stuff and work through, you know, a long problem if that's what it takes to try to make sure that you do the right thing by your employees, but also don't get into a lawsuit.
Yeah, that's great. Important, especially during these times. It's so complicated. We're going to get into the pandemic and all of that in a second. I also understand you have a loan fund through NIAC, one of the sister companies.
Well, we do, because we enjoy working with you on that. But we started that, I've got to think about that now, but it may be 4 or 5 years ago.
Oh, I think it's longer than that.
Longer than that?
It's 6 years ago,
6 or 7 years ago.
A while ago.
Yeah, when we found out that our members had a need for small loans, and It's been very successful. We're very happy with that. And we're happy, that some of the work that we did has now blossomed into the work that you're doing, Mark.
Yeah,
So
yeah, especially with American nonprofits, and yeah.
yes, love to help kick that off.
So, and thank you for that sponsorship. Okay, so let's switch gears, Pamela. And I think, the nonprofit sector, the world, every sector has changed over the last 18 months, 2 years. And it changes, on a given day, like prior to the pandemic, it changes. But I'd love to hear just kind of some big picture thoughts as you're seeing them of the nonprofit field in the past 18 months. And so maybe we can kind of just high level, and then I've got some questions about how you guys are looking at risk,
Okay.
Which obviously you're in the risk business.
Got it. I would say in the last 18 months, I've been, we see nonprofits at their worst times, right? Because when they have a claim, that's when we see them.
Right.
And I've always been a huge fan of the nonprofit sector because they do such amazing things. And I will tell you that over the last 18 months, I'm just even more impressed with how they have figured out how to do fundraising, take care of people that are, may not understand, if they're people that are in a position with not really understanding this pandemic, right? And yet they have to somehow continue to do their care. Just one example of, one of the nonprofits that we insure, they take care of 100 teens, right, in a residential facility. Imagine they can't go to school, so they have to have them there, right? They can't go out to see their families, so they're there all the time. I mean, and these are folks with, some mental health challenges and whatever. I mean, imagine how difficult that is. And yet they do it.
On any given day. And then you layer on COVID on top of it.
Yeah, just incredible resilience. I am sure that there's a lot of people that are really tired right now. And yet, we hear so much about the healthcare, which, thank God for all the healthcare workers. But I'm telling you, the nonprofit sector has stepped up. For example, food banks. I mean, to see the heroic work they've done, it's like, when there's a fire, nonprofits, everybody else runs away and nonprofits run towards the fire. How can I help? So, even though they were really stretched, they have just done amazing work and figured out how to do it safely.
And it's across the board, though. It's animal rights. It's
civil rights, civil justice,
rights. It's
environmental. To be honest, as I said, we have about 22,000 members. We thought at the beginning of the pandemic, maybe 20% of them might have to close their doors. So we were looking at our financials, kind of figuring out, what that would look like. In truth, 300 of them canceled their insurance out of 22,000.
Amazing.
And many of those are coming back now.
Amazing. That's great.
We don't want to leave, but we don't really have funding source.
So to that point, then, how are you guys looking at risk as it aligns with the pandemic? Like, how do you even do that? And I've got insurance through you, but I'm not covered for COVID. Like, how do you even, think about it?
Well, there's two things. The big risk with COVID and pandemics is really, having to shut down and business interruption coverage. We on our policy already had excluded that because we knew there's just no way you can charge enough money to be able to cover when everybody shuts down, even though we would
the entire world.
Yeah, you cannot do it, right? And so we were very clear on our policies. This is not one of the covered things. Now, there's a liability also related to the pandemic, potentially. And what happened on that was, for example, a homeless shelter, right? Someone might say, you didn't clean well enough, or I got the virus from you, right? From the homeless shelter. So where does that leave the nonprofits? Well, we have to purchase reinsurance for our large claims, right? Well, that whole industry at the end of 2020 said, we're not covering pandemic coverage, even on the liability side. We're not covering that. You have to exclude it on the liability side. Well, we're here to serve our members. And so we got together with a team and said, how are we going to offer something
Right.
so that if a nonprofit, a homeless shelter, or whatever gets sued for this, I mean, they're going to have to defend it, even if
Right.
it's not anything that they have done improper, they're going to have to defend it. So we came up with, really, I think it's still the only form that exists like this, which allows our members to purchase $250,000 of coverage, so that if there's a claim against them alleging that they somehow are at fault,
Mm-hmm.
we can defend and indemnify up to 250. Now, we've made it at that limit so that we
Right.
didn't want to entice, plaintiff
Right.
attorneys to say, oh, here's a big jackpot, right?
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And are you seeing people file claims to pull on that?
We're seeing some of our members who really feel that they need to purchase that are purchasing it. So it's
Yeah.
not been a vast majority,
Mm-hmm.
but they have the peace of mind to know that they have that coverage.
Mm-hmm.
We have not seen, I think we've seen maybe 1 or 2 claims.
Would you say those are the larger organizations that are getting that
Yes, for
insurance?
sure. The larger organizations who might be a target, for a plaintiff attorney, those are the ones, and generally the ones where they're having residential programs where people are in close proximity.
Right. Right.